I'm Rhonda Bondie, and I teach in the special education department in the ed school. And I'm going to share with you 4 quick strategies, just very practically for valuing all voices. So hopefully these are techniques that you can use with all the ideas that have just been shared, that might make them very practical for you. And I put my email in office if you have questions or would like some to talk about these anytime. I'd love to do it. So here's an example. Oh, I'll tell you the 4 we're going to do is the note catcher, gathering student responses, tasks that nurture belonging, and structured discussion routines. And we're just going to spend a couple seconds on each one. So here's an example of a discussion that I have with my teachers that I think is super important for building belonging. Is a lot of the classroom practices that we have are unintentionally carry with them opportunity to marginalize certain students in class. And one of the ones that I work on a lot is thinking about the difference between these 2 pictures, and where power is situated in the classroom, and how voices are valued and how many voices are valued, and looking at different types of ways to gather student responses, which I'm going to show you some practical strategies in a moment. But the first strategy is just simply adding a note catcher to peer discussions, because oftentimes in peer discussions, social regulation takes place, and students who are historically marginalized continue to be marginalized by their peers in the discussion that's supposed to build class belonging. So I'm trying to make this a little bigger so you can see it, but this is an idea of a note catcher, which you could use a Google Doc or a piece of paper or anything. But these are some of my students responding to the difference between the 2 pictures. And I always use a note catcher. And at the bottom of the note catcher, it has a way for everybody to see what's gone on in each group and then to do some summarizing. So this is a way for me to monitor as discussions are unfolding in peer groups, whether they're on Zoom or in person. But it's also a way for students to see what's happening across the whole class. And then I can go to the group that seems to need some help with their discussion. They can comment on each other's very quickly. So I offer to you the note catcher, which is a great way for students to expand beyond just the group that they're talking with, but situate their responses within the whole class. And so tip 2 is gathering student responses. So if we look at that picture on the right, where the teacher was listening to the students and able to hear all the students, like how can we do that with large classes of 30 people and 50 people? Well, one of my favorites is this idea of show and share. And you can see the picture on the right there, where students might have an individual response. They gather in a group, create a group response, 1, 2, 3, show and share. And everyone can see the responses of everyone in the whole class. I also have like loads of routines for gathering and putting responses into groups and patterns. So if you want more of those, I'd love to share them. But show and share is like one of the simplest ways to do that first before calling on hands for additional responses. And I think this is a critical part of teaching practices that build a culture where students can belong. And nurture feelings of belonging. You can also have group reporters. You could use a digital tool or a survey or a Jamboard where people are doing the same kind of note catcher kind of thing, or chart paper if you're in person. So there's lots of different ways to gather student responses, but thinking about gathering responses in ways other than calling on hands first, not that you would never call on hands, but never call on hands first, is an important way to build belonging. And so here's an example of teacher educators doing show and share. It's a lot of fun. 1, 2, 3, show and share. I always do it in perfect silence. And then they have to point to something in someone else's work that they'd like to talk with them about. Maybe they have a question, a connection, and then they can start their conversation. So it's a great way to invite everyone in. It's also good to do after a conversation. Like, what did you learn from the conversation? 1, 2, 3, show and share. What did you learn from the lesson today? Show and share. Most important word. So the third tip is just really the way we structure tasks. And I thought this was a great example task from an art teacher in one of my classes here. And the things I wanted to point out is the amount of choice that's offered in a task, having clear criteria so students have an expectation of what does good work look like, and ways to make some of the criteria be that the activity is meaningful to you, which is, I think, what Josh was also talking about. So I highlighted here in this example task, find a creative way to answer 2 of the 3 questions. If like question 1 was required for the course syllabus, it would be required question 1 and either 2 or 3. So everybody's always answering 2 questions, but they can have some autonomy and some choice in their question. Here we have what would make your response of high quality, of good work, which can be produced with the students or articulated by the teacher or co-created or a combination of both. And then I always like to have an amazing criteria, which I highlighted in pink, which usually has to do with how it's amazing when the response is unique to you. It shows your growth. It shows something new that you tried. It shows something that you're interested in. You've done the assignment. That's the must-have. And it's amazing when it becomes personal, when it furthers your own pursuits. So it's great to have some criteria for how did this assignment further your own pursuits. And in this time, your answer is special to you and demonstrates your thoughts and feelings. This is an assignment for young kids, but I thought it would maybe be an inspiring, and it's so easy to turn any discussion question in your class into this type of 3 questions with must-have and amazing criteria so that students know how to have a high-quality discussion with peers and how to make it amazing, how to nurture their own individual pursuits. And finally, my 4th suggestion is to add some structure, not always, but sometimes, to peer discussion routines. Why? To disrupt patterns of social regulation that marginalize some students. So the teacher takes over social regulation every now and then. So I want to share just 2 real quick routines that are real fun and easy to do. One is 2 by 2 by 2, 2 people, 2 minutes, and 2 products. So, or it could be 4 by 1 by 3, whatever numbers you want. It's just the number of people, how much time you're giving them for the conversation, and the products of that conversation, whether it be questions, vocabulary words, facts, connections to what we're doing in class, whatever kind of thinking product you might want. So here are some doctoral students here in our EDD program doing a 3 by 1 each by 1, where each person had a minute to explain their notes. And then we took 10 seconds in between each person, and I timed it for people to process and just think about what they heard. And I think this is another important thing that we can do in class to build belonging, is to slow down conversations so that there's not an expectation of thinking about how you're going to reply, but there's an expectation of fully taking someone in, knowing that in this class or in this particular structured conversation, there'll be time to think, to prepare, and then the next person will go. And we will do this type of sharing where we see the full landscape of ideas before we enter into an open exchange where we navigate so that we fully understand all the ideas before we kind of decide which one we're going to focus on. So I put some examples in here that you could, I'll put the slideshow in the chat and you could maybe edit for your own class. And the last routine I was going to share real quick is the domino discover, which is one of my favorites, where each person, kind of like dominoes, takes a moment to share their idea in a group. And we do this because just like dominoes, when they all fall, you can see something new that you couldn't see before. If each domino didn't fall, we wouldn't see a full view of the new image. And by sharing, we can see something that we couldn't see if we held our ideas to ourselves, if we stood with our idea like a domino. So I feel like it's a great image for students. And the routine goes like this. First, everybody just does an assignment. Maybe it's a list, draw, write of their ideas. So they prepare in any kind of way that you want. They could prepare talking and then get an idea, bring notes to class, but there's preparation so that we know everybody is prepared. If someone's absent, I give them something that they can annotate and share. If a student is incomplete with their work, someone who has it complete gives their version to another student so that each person gets to practice presenting ideas. And then we just simply, like dominoes, each person goes in their group. Then we have a conversation about connections, perspectives. We have just an open conversation, and we create a group response. Then it could just be a show and share if you're short for time. And I wrote more detailed directions so you can remember how this goes. Or you can have a reporter from each group share. I usually make them rise up and come to the front of the class and share down a row. So we have another domino of the reporters from the group standing up. So it's easy to see and it's easy to hear everyone. And then I make the students go back to their initial preparation to revise or add based on their discussions and their ideas from the other groups. And while they do that, me as the teacher, I can make some adjustments based on the responses that I've heard for how to make the next part of the lesson more relevant to the students. So I love 2 by 2 by 2 and domino as ways to really gather equitably responses from all voices in the classroom, which I think is key for building belonging. And this is an example of one of my math teachers who said, like, if she had not known that the kids didn't have the definition for slope, she would have carried on with the lesson that built on a faulty foundation. But she knew because of the 1, 2, 3 show and share, which took her like all of 60 seconds to do. So I offer, this is the domino structure. So I offer domino to you. So we have the note catcher, a way to catch notes from the groups that's public and shareable. We have gathering responses in ways other than calling on hands. We have, or in addition to, and hands not first, tasks that nurture belonging. Think about those must-haves and amazings, and then structured discussion routines. So I hope that I put some extra resources in there too for how you can learn more of these structured routines, but I hope they're helpful to you.